welcome to Turning the Tables. We call this Cooking to Thrive in the 21st Century because this series focuses on creating food that promotes health on both an individual and an environmental scale. We're learning master recipes designed to work with whatever you have on hand, with plenty of local and plant-based whole food ingredients. Cooking this way generates vitality and reduces environmental impacts. Flexibility in the kitchen unlocks endless flavor opportunities and makes eating a nutritionally balanced, eco-friendly food fun and intuitive. This series is sponsored by Cornell Cooperative Extension Ulster County and the Ellenville Rural Regional Healthcare Network and Stick to Local Studios. I'm Maria Reidelbach. Today we're going to be making egg frittata. And if you've ever had egg frittata, you know how delicious it is. And if you've never had egg frittata, oh, you're in for such a nice surprise. Egg frittatas are easy to make, quick, and they can be eaten for breakfast, lunch, dinner, or even snacks. And you can make them with whatever vegetables you've got on hand and add sprinkles of extras for more fun. So let's take a look at what you'll need to make your own egg frittata. To make your own frittata, you will need some vegetables, some onions or garlic, some oil, some eggs, of course, some salt, pepper, and herbs. And then you'll need a bowl, a pan with a lid, a fork, a knife, and a flipper. That's it. So let's go on over to my kitchen and we'll make a frittata. So I've got my eggs handy. I've got a red pepper. I've got a half a zucchini. I've got an onion. I've got garlic. Some leftover cooked potatoes. A little cheese. Some olive oil. Some parsley and some cilantro. Salt. Pepper. And I am going to be making 2 frittatas out of these ingredients. One is a pepper and zucchini frittata, and the other is a potato and garlic frittata. So one thing that I have discovered is that when you get herbs at the store or at the market, they're often bundled tightly. And if you store them in the fridge bundled like that, the deterioration starts happening where it's bundled because they just can't breathe. So a little tip to help your herbs last longer is when you get them home, just take that rubber band or string off and put them in a bag and store them in the fridge. Now I know some people store their herbs in a vase, and that is helpful for some herbs and not for other herbs. But you can always, store them in a bag in the fridge. So I am going to separate out some of the herbs. And first thing I'm going to do is whenever you're working with fresh herbs, of course you'll want to wash them. And right there I am using a basket with little wings that fits over my sink that I got in Chinatown in New York City. And really it is one of the most handy kitchen gadgets that I've got. I just basically leave it in the sink all the time, and it's really wonderful for resting produce when you clean it. I don't know about you, but I often have a dirty dish or two lurking around in the kitchen sink. And also Scientists tell us that the kitchen sink is the dirtiest place in the kitchen. So it's nice to have a little suspended basket where that you know is clean and where you can easily clean your produce. So I'm just spraying them with water. You don't need any of that fancy dishwashing or, sorry, vegetable washing soap that they sell now. Consumer Reports tells us that it really doesn't do anything, so don't bother with that. So I'm separating out some of the wilted leaves and I'm putting them in a little bowl for compost. And now I'm checking a stem to just see whether it's tough or tender. And with parsley, generally the stems are pretty tough. And so I'm just going to go through and just nip off the leaves. And it's always a good thing to test what you're cooking. Don't be afraid. And it's a good habit to get into. So I'm just separating all of these leaves from the stems. And I always like using a lot of herbs when I'm cooking. They have really lots of delicious, complex flavors. And also, the flavors show that they also have a lot of nutrition because vitamins and minerals taste a little bitter, and so do herbs. They're strong. You don't want to use them as too much, but um, some herbs are stronger than others. Parsley and cilantro are two of the lighter flavored herbs. We call them tender herbs. So there I've got all my parsley stems in a bowl, and I'm just going to like dry that parsley off a little bit so it doesn't stick together. And now I'm going to work on the cilantro. So I'm giving the stem another taste. I love to cook with lots of herbs. Herbs have beautiful complex flavors, and they also have lots of nutrition too. And you can kind of tell that from what they taste like, because vitamins and minerals are often slightly bitter or sour, and so are herbs. And then they have these wonderful aromatics that layer the flavor. Now, I want to show you how to sharpen a knife, since so many people asked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just lay the knife blade on top, almost flat, and just tilt it slightly until I can feel the edge of the sharp part aligning with the flat of the stone. Take a close look. You're going to be able to figure this out. And you go from tip to hilt, and you do it very evenly. You don't have to do it fast, and you'll get lots of good practice using your left hand on this. Um, and if you notice, I'm pulling away from the blade. So I am not pushing the blade forward, I'm pulling it back. So here we go. I'm just giving these a quick sharpening. Often you'll sharpen longer than this. And then I'm going to just, wipe the blade in case there's any little bit of residue from that stone. And now I'm ready to go. So I've lined up my stems. I'm just going to trim off the bottom bits and just kind of cut those in half and line them up to chop them more quickly. And just doing a quick rough chopping of these. They don't need to be super small. Kind of like my food a little bit on the chunky side. Usually, pureed foods are good too, but a frittata is sort of peasant food, which is one of my favorite kinds of food, home-cooked food. And so often you can see the ingredients, you can tell what's in there, and you get a different flavor with every mouthful. So I'm chopping up the parsley. This is flat leaf parsley. There's also curly parsley. People say they can taste the difference. I can't, but generally I'll just get the flat leaf parsley because. Um, So here we go, popping this into just a little container. It's nice to have a bunch of little bowls when you're cooking. You can prep your stuff in advance and line it up. So now I'm going for the onion. And I don't want to cut that whole onion up, so I'm saving up part of it, and I left the root end because that'll hold it together. Now I'm cutting off the part that has the green end, and I'm peeling it and putting those onion scraps into the compost bowl. You can also use some onion skins and herb stems for making stock, which I often do. You can just, take all your cuttings and the ones that are not wilted, um, and pop them in a Ziploc bag and keep them in your freezer until you're ready to make stock on some colder, rainy day. Usually is when I make stock, and it makes the whole house smell really nice. All right, so I'm just like chopping these onions. I like to kind of chop them in an orderly way because it's quick and they all end up the same size. Onions are sort of pre-chopped because they're in those layers, making them really easy. And so our first step is going to be to saute the onion or garlic in a little bit of oil in a small pan. So this is going to be a 4-egg frittata. And I like to load my frittatas up with lots of vegetables, basically as much as the pan will hold. So I'm putting those onions in to cook them, get them started cooking. And now I'm going to chop the garlic for the potato frittata. Now garlic, you got to cut a little smaller because the flavor is so much sharper. You don't want to burn anybody's mouth. When you cook garlic, it does calm down quite a bit. But especially if you're going to be eating garlic raw, you really want to chop it finely. You want to mince it. So I'm just getting those peels off. How many garlics have we peeled in a lifetime? A friend asked me how to help cooking in a kitchen, and I said, well, ask the cook if you can start working on garlic, because almost always home cooks use garlic in their meals. So giving those onions a little stir. They are on medium heat and they're bubbling away. Now I'm mincing that garlic. I like to peel garlic with a small knife and then mince it with a large knife. I find that the large knife is a little easier to handle for chopping small things. So I'm just like chopping those up. And again, it doesn't have to be too fine because we're cooking it, but it's much smaller than the onion. And there we go, I found a little big bit. Now I am going to move my first pan over to a smaller flame and getting ready to put my garlic in. And one of the things about a big knife is that you can also use it as a little flipper or spatula to get your ingredients into the pan. Watching your fingers, of course. Now we've got this beautiful bell pepper, bright red. It's the middle of winter when we're recording this, and so it's kind of always nice to see like a hit of really bright color in the middle of winter. So I'm just cutting that in half, and I'm going to clean the seeds out of it. Again, putting those into the compost bowl. Peppers have such a delicious flavor. Yellow and orange and red bell peppers all taste pretty much the same. Green bell peppers have a different flavor. It's more kind of more vegetal and I don't know, more green. I like that flavor too. It's not quite as sweet as the yellow, red, and orange peppers, which have ripened for a longer period of time and develop more sugars. So here we go. I'm going to chop these, fairly finely. They're going to be about, the size of my the end of my pinky finger, I guess, maybe a little bigger. I like to have, you know, a nice dispersed uh, vegetable thing happening in my frittatas. You want to surround every vegetable with enough egg to kind of glue the whole thing together. So again, I'm kind of orderly in my chopping. I like to put things in slices and then cut them crosswise to make sure they're all pretty much the same size. But of course, then there's always a couple that are not. So here we go, getting that all chopped up. You can see over there in my pan the garlic is sizzling, and I am going to toss in the peppers into the onion skillet. And how did I choose which one to use garlic with and which one to use onions with? It was just whatever I liked. You know, one of the nice things about frittatas is you can really choose what you want. All right, so the next step is to add vegetables and then a tiny bit of water to help steam them along. So what you're going to want to do is add your vegetables. So in this case, I'm adding red bell peppers and then zucchini. So I'm not putting my water in quite yet. I'm going to wait until I get my zucchini in there, giving that a little stir, and got my zucchini ready there. Just trimming it, jockeying my pans. Here we go, cutting this up nice and thin. I actually like chopping vegetables. It's fun to try different methods, different shapes. If you pay attention when you're cooking, you can teach yourself all kinds of things. And if you get a chance to cook with other people, I always love to do that because I always learn something new from other cooks. And it makes it so much more fun. So here we go. I'm really kind of overloading that skillet, I have to say, but you know, this kind of shows how flexible this recipe is, that you can kind of, you know, stretch some of the rules and it still works out okay. So I'm going to clap it with a lid. Supposed to be a tight fitting lid, but as you could see, there was just a little crack there, but it'll still work. I don't really have a tight fitting lid for that skillet, so it goes. So here are these nice potatoes. These are Yukon Gold potatoes, and they are in between being a starchy potato and a waxy potato. Starchy potatoes are floury and fluffy when you open them up. Waxy potatoes are a little wetter and firmer and hold their shape more. I'm cutting these in slices, kind of wedges really. I kind of like to have a little game with myself to see how evenly I can cut things sometimes. Keeps from being bored. Of course, it's also really nice to put some nice music on too. Here we go, slicing this up. And again, that nice sharp knife makes very short work. A sharp knife will save you time and is actually less dangerous than a dull knife, because a dull knife, sometimes you push too hard and that's when you have accidents. I speak from personal experience and 4 stitches from some dull blades. Thank you, Ellenville Hospital Emergency Room, who stitched me up. So here we go, chopping these guys up, going in, such a beautiful shade of yellow. Now you could use all kinds of different vegetables for frittatas. You can use broccoli, cauliflower, winter squash, summer squash. You can use tomatoes, although they're pretty juicy, and so you'll want to kind of like cook the water out of those first. So here we go. You can see all the steam that's built up here. They're really steaming nicely. A little hard to stir because I really overpacked that skillet, but you know, they're all going to settle down a little bit as they get cooked. So just giving that another stir. Yeah, there we go. You can use as many different ingredients in your frittata as you like too. You can really mix and match your vegetables. There we go, and the lid's going to fit a little better this time. Yep. And going to stir these potatoes and warm them up. Now the potatoes are already cooked, and so basically what I want to do is get them good and hot so that when I pour the eggs on, it will cook more evenly and the middle won't be cold. So I'm just warming these guys up, separating them, mixing them in with the garlic, and then just kind of making sure. The next step is to mix your eggs with some herbs and some salt and pepper. And all you need is a fork, but you can use a whisk if you like. So I'm making 2 frittatas, so I'm going to be breaking a bunch of eggs. By the way, eggshells are really good for your compost heap. They add calcium. And about eggs, I really love to get eggs at the farmer's market and at roadside stands, and I just wanted to make sure that you knew. I always wondered whether a roadside egg stand was safe to get eggs at. And I have just found out through research that it is perfectly okay to get eggs from a roadside stand. There's nothing wrong with them, and they are delightful and often more flavorful and deeply colored than eggs that you get at the supermarket. Eggs at the farmer's market can be so amazing in many different colors. They are more expensive, but you know, even at $6 a dozen, eggs are only 50 cents a piece, which makes it a real bargain in terms of adding protein to your dinner. And eggs have a much, much smaller footprint than beef, for instance, or pork, or even chicken. So, and as Kathy Puffer pointed out at Hudson Valley Vertical Farms in the related video, chickens, if they're raised in a sustainable environment, can do lots of other work around a farm. So here we go, checking these out. There's still a lot of, a little bit of water there in the bottom. You can see lots of steam coming up again. Cooking these away. Now I want to really wait until these are almost done because, as you probably know, eggs cook pretty quickly. So I want these to be pretty done. Now, the zucchini is pretty juicy, and as that cooks, it's going to be releasing more water. So be aware, things like zucchini, tomatoes, mushrooms, and other juicy produce, that as you cook it will be releasing more water, and you're going to want to kind of cook that water off so that your frittata is not runny. So I'm adding some salt and pepper, and I am not going to add my herbs to this because I'm making 2 separate frittatas. So I'm going to add the herbs to the separate pans. So this is another way that this recipe is nice and flexible. So I'm sprinkling the parsley on the potatoes. First place I ever had potato frittata was at a Basque restaurant in New York City, and they served them as tapas, and they were very garlicky, and they were just delightful with cocktails in the late afternoon. They have little bites of frittata. They were served in small slices, and they were so good. So here we go, just kind of stirring those herbs in, flattening this out. It's all nice and warm now, and I am going to now check out my other pan full, and they are definitely getting cooked. Still a fair amount of water in there. So this is when I'm going to take off the lid and turn up the heat and boil that water away while keeping a close eye on it. It won't take very long, maybe 5 minutes. Our recipe recommends a 1/4 cup of water. You could probably use less, even just a couple tablespoons. But you'll want to keep an eye to make sure that the water doesn't steam off and leave your vegetables sauteing rather than steaming, because then you'll have to watch for them browning. So here we go. I'm turning up the heat, cleaning off my flipper, and magical thing, time lapse. There we go. The water's all gone. Things are looking good there. I'm going to add the cilantro. And there are lots of tasty additions you can add to your frittatas besides vegetables and herbs. I'm going to add a little bit of cheese. You can add bacon bits, you know, all kinds of little tasty nuggets. Little bits of ham or prosciutto or sausage, cooked sausage. So I'm just stirring that all in, spilling stuff because my pan's so full. Okay, there I go, putting in the rest of the cheese. Now, if you'll notice, I saved some of the herbs back to sprinkle on the finished frittata. Fresh herbs have a different flavor than cooked herbs, and it's nice to layer them. So the next step is really simple. You take your eggs and you pour them into your frittata. And you know, I'm not going to measure, I'm just guessing half and half. Again, this is a very flexible recipe. You don't really have to worry too much about amounts. That's going over onto low heat. Again, you want a lid on there to keep that heat in and to cook your frittata evenly. Now, this is a bigger pan, so the frittata is going to be thinner, but that's okay. And I'm pouring in the rest of the egg. And I can see that it needs a little bit down there at the bottom. So I just want to get that nice and even. And then I'm going to check it out. And you can see that the edge is cooked, but the inside is still runny. I'm going to check this guy out, and it is basically all cooked with just a slightly runny spot, like right in there. So back it goes. It'll be cooked in a minute. Now both of these are over very low heat. This guy is still, I'm waiting for that to cook. If you have a broiler and you're in a hurry, you can just pop that under the broiler. I'm letting the handle stick out because the handle's silicone. I don't want to heat it up too much. And with Teflon, you also need to not heat it up over 500 degrees. So you do have to be careful. So here we go. I'm kind of unmolding this onto a plate. And just loosening the edges up with my flipper. So much for Teflon, huh? There we go. It's all loose. And I'm going to flip it out by turning it over. So you just put the plate on upside down and you flip the whole thing. And there we go. Now, but what I discovered was that some of it had stuck. And so I don't want to miss those nice brown bits. So I am just going to pull them out and put them on my frittata, and no one will be the wiser. So I'm just going to add those back, and I'm going to pull my potato frittata out of the broiler, and as you can see, it's all cooked now. And you don't have to flip your frittata over when you're done. You can serve it from the same skillet, or you can just slide it out onto a plate. Often the top is prettier than the bottom, I have to say, but you'll find your own favorite way to do it. So there we go. There's the, and as you can see, the potato one didn't stick at all. What do you know? But here I am. This is where the sprinkles come in handy. They're going to cover up that messy top on the red pepper frittata, and they're going to add a little more garnish to the potato frittata. You can eat frittatas hot, cold, or room temperature. I prefer warm or room temperature myself. Now you can see how beautiful that is inside. It almost looks marbleized. And here we go with the delicious zucchini and red pepper frittata. So one of the fun things about doing these classes is getting to taste all of these delicious food. And I'll tell you, these frittatas just turned out magnificently. They were so, so good. Thank you so much for visiting our cooking class. Again, this is a program of Cornell Cooperative Extension, Ulster County, Ellenville Regional Rural Health Network, Stick to Local Studios. I'm Maria Reidelbach. See you in the kitchen.